John is the Google's Vice President of Global Advertiser Operations. And he's worked for before Google, you worked for 16 years with all kinds of IT firms. I'm seeing, where are my notes here? Quite a number of, for KPMG, of course, Oracle, First Data, Adobe, PeopleSoft, Epiphany. You name it, you've been out there.
Absolutely, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. We won't say which one. But what we'd like to start, first of all, if we can talk about trends. You got your ear on the ground. You're talking to all kinds of SMEs out there in what you're doing. What trends do you see in e-commerce now?
Well, first of all, I'd say thank you very much to the previous panel, who I think you did a tremendous setup job. And I think they brought some pretty unique perspective to what's happening around the world. I think that the key trend, there's a couple of trends. One is fast beats slow. We've moved away from a process where you needed to be big to win. This is all about speed. I think there were some comments about the amount of data and data analytics. Today, probably 90% of the data that's available in the world was created in the last 2 years. We talk about what the sensory networks and a variety will do. So it's all about the ability to adapt, to move.
The willingness to adapt.
The willingness to adapt, to take on board that challenge.
Do you see a trend, a positive trend in that direction?
I think it depends on what part of the world you're living in. I think Asia is moving incredibly quickly. I think the United States is moving quickly, and Europe in parts moving very quickly, in other parts not so. I think if we think about, sometimes we get caught up in the word broadband, and in truth, I think in Europe we're talking about in broadband, but North America and Asia has solved that problem, and they've now moved on to mobile. This is about ubiquitous mobile devices available. You go to a lot of Europe, you land in an airport in Asia, and your device will be bombarded with 3 or 4 different ways to connect for free. You arrive at a European-type airport, and trying to connect is hard, and believe me, it won't be for free. And so you're going to get this whole situation where in certain parts of the world they've embraced the opportunity that digital is creating, and they're making it easy for people. And I think where you break down those barriers, you create reasons and you create a belief for people to jump on board. I think the other trend is, and we talk about the whole area of education. For all of us, who are here, and apologies, I'm another white male sitting on up here on the panel.
But not a North American, please.
No, but Irish originally. We would have grown up in an educational environment where we learned by the quill, which became the pen. And in many ways across Europe, we're still teaching our kids the same way. But you move to the faster moving countries of Asia and large parts of North America, the instrument of education is digital. And so when you start to think about that, those citizens that are being created are in effect digital natives. They don't know of anything other than digital, so they're operating within that mode on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's a trend that you start to see. But that kind of reflects that what's the big mega trend around there? I think we're really seeing a seismic computational and communication shift. Sometimes when you're in the midst of a storm, you can't quite see it around you. And the danger of our industry is sometimes we can use hyperbole, or we use acronyms. I think the key thing is how many phones out there are smartphones. Who today would go and buy a phone that wasn't a smartphone? What sort of devices are you doing? So what that means then for a business, because I think Jeff in the previous panel had a great thing. He said, don't talk about this as the ICT industry. He's absolutely right. No. What this is a series of tools and technologies that help business. Business is the same as it was 100 years ago. Business is about delivering something of value to your customers. But what technology does is it creates an ability for you to simplify the complex stuff. Things that used to force you to put an awful lot of your relative capital and devote it to solving complex administrative trivial problems, you can now use technology to do in a very cheap fashion, so you can invest in people to solve the problems of your customers and build great customer relationships.
Yeah, I think you told me that you can estimate starting up a business with administration around 50,000.
About 50,000. You know,
as
a couple of
opposed
years ago,
to
5 million. So you're now talking about the relative cost to start up a business in a soft technology-oriented business now being 1% of what it was 5 to 6 years ago. Suddenly, from a business point of view, your break-even point is fundamentally different. You're at a point in time where you can energize your business quickly. You can also then start a business with 5 people in 5 different locations in 5 different countries speaking 5 different languages because you have common subject matter expertise. You've got a communication framework where you can talk to each other. You can share files, you can share, and you can collaborate on a variety of different activities.
So why isn't all this happening? What is the challenge to this?
I think in a couple of areas it's kind of citizen businesses' willingness to adapt. You know, if you kind of think about, you know, if you launch a business in North America or Asia, you don't even consider whether you're going to be online. You're actually asking whether you're going to bother with a desktop solution or will you go straight to mobile.
So it's a mindset
It's a mindset issue. In large places, I think it is a mindset issue. You know, sometimes I think the culture of entrepreneurship, we sometimes can create a stigma about failure. But in many ways, you know, we learn from failure. When you think about as kids, we all, you know, many people around here, we learned to ride a bicycle. And by falling off the bicycle, we knew we didn't like to get hurt. We knew this wasn't a good thing. So by that failure, we learned to ride the bicycle. But for some reason, when that moves to the business community within Europe, we kind of love to celebrate the failure as opposed to say, hey, you know, God, okay, something bad happened, but you've learned from it, and you move on.
Okay, so how do you change that?
So I think the first thing is you need to, first of all, is acknowledge that out of failure comes success. Most of the successful scientific experiments that have ever taken place were because the great scientist, previous experiment, got the wrong answer. And from that, they learned to continually to fine-tune. It's the same in business.
So you mean from that, is that from a cultural standpoint? Is that from a financial standpoint or
I think it's a
legal standpoint?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think culturally, if you accept failure, you'll accept financing businesses that understands that not everything will win. So I think it starts with culturally. Then from a financial point of view, like I think, if I think about it from a financial point of view, actually failure is good. Because you like to know that the person you're giving your money to actually, you know, made a few mistakes before and knows that next time round they're going to do it a little bit differently. So in many ways, there's actually the positive value of failure. The whole thing is you evolve and you understand that, you know what, you know, in many cases, a product or something that was brought to market might have been too soon or for the wrong customer segment. It's not a question of throwing it out, it's a question of adapting. And I think that ability to adapt at speed is what's differentiating the great companies of the future from what will be the average companies of the future.
So what about the idea of a champion? Champion, like
when you
Ryanair, for instance.
Yeah, I think Ryanair is tremendous.
Yeah.
Like if you look, I think there's a great story with Ryanair. Many, many years ago, when they were figuring out and putting all of their business online, they got a couple of students to write the code to do that. And when they realized at the very end that, oh my God, they've only done it 2 separate one-way tickets instead of returns, they said, okay, rather than actually spend the money and actually spend the time, they rolled out a new business model. That's tremendous. But I think the important thing there is that's a traditional industry. Using technology to simplify the customer experience and putting the customer in charge. And so from that, they've grown their business. Where I come from, Paddy Power is an online gaming company, growing tremendously well, not just in Ireland, but all throughout the world. But again, they're using technology to make it easier for customers to do business. And I think you're seeing that everywhere. And I think successful companies are using platforms. And I think, again, Jeff made a great point about how, you know, for 97 or 98% of the companies' use of the platform is the right, and for there's a couple of percent that it's wrong. So I think the key thing here is to adapt quickly, to use technology, but more importantly, technology is part of the solution. And we just should embrace it and understand that our customers, if there's a way to simplify the simple, repetitive parts of the business so that you can invest in the high-value creating parts of the business, you'll create deeper customer relationships and ultimately create more sustainable businesses.
Okay, so you're talking mindset, but what about, is that the only thing? There must be other challenges there that we have to face.
So I think
in trying to expand the use of the internet for businesses to thrive, and not just internet, not just IT businesses?
No, but I think what I think you're starting to see in a lot of countries, I've seen some reports that when you say free up public sector data and you enable people then to use it. For example, I've seen an example of that in the UK when they made cycling data available, and a couple of guys then using some technology, including Google, to create some mashups, they were able to identify where 90% of the accidents happened. So suddenly cyclists didn't go there anymore. Don't cycle on this road because you've got a much greater chance of getting knocked over. That's a tremendous benefit. So it happens in different places. Talk about education. We saw a really interesting result of an experiment about a year ago. A couple of Google guys who were computer scientists, they put a course online through Stanford University, Introduction to Artificial Intelligence. That's a pretty difficult concept to teach, and it's highly sought after even in Stanford. 160,000 people signed up to do it online. As I understand, 23,000 people completed the course. Two guys, Peter and Sebastian, they thought 23,000 of the world's potential engineers in artificial intelligence. Those two guys thought more than the rest of the totality of artificial intelligence professors in the world had ever taught in their entirety. And as a consequence, Sebastian moved off quickly and formed a company in that space. And so I think what's happening in lots of places is the barriers sometimes are more as you look at it from the country that you're in. I think there are a number of countries and there are a number of businesses around the world that are embracing digital and racing ahead. And so I think from our point of view, I think we've made some giant steps in the creation of the single market. Lots to go.
Yeah, it's not a completion.
It's not
finished yet. Yeah.
But I still think about 25. I'm dating myself now, but 25 years ago, thinking of leaving university and trying what was available then versus what's available now. So I think things have moved on. So yes, there's an awful lot to go, but I think there's a process. And I think as entrepreneurs come up against challenges and show ways around it, I think the single market continues at a pace.
Okay, and then lastly, let's talk about innovation. We've got some, at the break after this, we're going to be able to go out and talk to some very innovative little companies out there.
I think there's some tremendous. I just walked around before we came in, and I'd encourage everybody just to go and kind of ask these guys what problem they're trying to solve. Mm-hmm. There's some great ideas. So I think what you have is, and I hesitate the word mobile, but the move to mobile technology is moving incredibly quickly. I think about the whole area of car sharing in a city. So,
we've got that here in Brussels.
Yeah, it's tremendous. So I'm now in a point in time where I regularly, if I need a taxi from my mobile, I know who the driver is, I know the registration of the car, I get the bill or the invoice afterwards, so I've got complete record. If I ever leave anything in the car, I know exactly who I was there, or which car I was in, but it moves incredibly quickly. So I think that's a tremendous innovation that's starting to happen. So in many ways, you have, and that's one of hundreds of examples. And so I think what you're starting to see is the markets and the countries that are adopting mobile technology at speed, where thousands of people are using it, are going quickly. I think Khan Academy is doing some tremendous and providing tremendous education, over broadband mobile networks. Great teachers teaching great things. So many like that. Weathercasting, the whole ability to actually, ironically, one of the things that on a Saturday in Dublin, when I'm checking the weather, there's actually a Norwegian weather site that has much better insight into the Dublin weather. And all the guys I know use it, right? So that's tremendous, and people are naturally going there.
What about, you spent time in Poland.
Yes.
What about in emerging markets like in Eastern Europe? What innovation potential do you see there?
I think there's huge innovation potential. So in a lot of the Eastern European countries, they have maintained a very firm mathematical foundation to their educational system. In many ways related to the old, maybe Soviet bloc. I'm not an expert in exactly what they've done, but we see tremendous graduates coming out with a very, very firm foundation in the absolute mathematical and the hard sciences. And that is providing them with a great ability to adapt, because in large parts of kind of modern technologies are based upon a mathematical framework. And no matter, whoever joins technology today, the one thing you know is that technology will change incredibly quickly, so adaptability becomes key. So that basis of that old fashioned, for want of a better word, educational process is providing them with a great set of foundations to adapt. And that is one of the things that I see, some tremendous underlying mathematical capability. And when you cluster groups of people together, you provide great abilities to solve problems for customers. And so I think I'm very, very bullish on the opportunities that are ahead for the emerging markets.
You spent a number of years watching over EMEA.
Yes.
Now you're VP Global Advertiser Ops. But when you, from hindsight and from what you've seen in the evolution after Arab Spring, what potential do you see in that region?
Oh, I think it's fantastic because, first of all, you have a large marketplace. Remarkably,
some are more connected than others.
Some are more connected to others. Some are more
right?
connected than others. Remarkably, if you kind of go down the whole spine of Africa,
yeah.
These guys know how to use mobile. So the traditional model was a fisherman went out, got his catch, went 100 miles off coast, got his catch, and came back in and sold for the best available price. Today they go out, and what they do is they basically broadcast what's available, and 6 or 7 markets up and down will tell them what price they'll pay, and they'll decide, okay, let's set sail and go 200 miles south, let's set sail and go 200 miles north.
He's doing that with his
Using
mobile
that
phone?
With his mobile phone.
Wow.
SMS. He's determining, and instead of getting 80 cents a pound, he's now getting $2 a pound.
Right.
Suddenly it's changing the fundamental economics, and the fisherman is actually maintaining a large share of the price, as opposed to it going to intermediaries. This is resulting in that fisherman being able to employ more people to join him on the boat, and over time, more people able to buy a boat. That's the simplistic things that are happening. Because once you put the power of information in the hands of the entrepreneur is able to make the best asset allocation decision. And the asset allocation is their time. So in this whole situation, entrepreneurs are tremendous creators of value because they understand that the unit of creation of value is their time. And in that situation, the fisherman, by going 200 miles north rather than 200 miles south, may be getting 3x the revenue. That's a huge economic return, which then enables them to continue to reinvest into their business. And so for that, and reasons like that, I see this digital revolution, this computational revolution, really providing the infrastructure and the capability to citizens who previously didn't have access to it.
Very good. John, I think that can wrap it up. I think we'll move on and take a look at the exhibition space. But for now, let's give a big hand to John Herlihy for joining us. Thank you very much.